The land title business is technical. In many respects, it's scientific. Had it been developed 200 years ago, it would probably now be regarded as a profession. While closely related to the law, to engineering, and even to accounting, it has distinguishing characteristics that set it apart from these related professions. The land title business has its own language. It is English, of course, but it is laced with a multitude of words, phrases, terms, and idioms beyond the vocabulary of the uninitiated layman. As a result, the greatest difficulty in acquiring title industry knowledge may lie in comprehending the language. Comprehension involves not only an understanding of the word's definitions, it also involves the ability to visualize the concepts and functions to which these terms apply. So perhaps the best place for us to start a discussion about the land title industry is by examining one of its most important terms, real property. There are two classes of property with which people are generally familiar: real property, also known as real estate, and personal property. These two classes of property have characteristics entirely different from each other. Real property, which is basically land, is permanent, immovable, and indestructible. Personal property, on the other hand, is usually impermanent, movable, and destructible, and ranges all the way from needles and pins to steamboats and locomotives. In the land title business, we have very little to do with personal property. Real estate title companies generally deal with real property only. It should be noted that while the terms land and real estate are often used interchangeably, they are not quite the same thing. Land is the ground that we stand on. It's made of the crust of the exposed surface of the earth and is, of course, real property. The term real estate encompasses more than just land. It also includes things of a relatively permanent nature which are embedded in or attached to the land and which are intended to be real property, such as trees or buildings. Observe that word intended. Here we encounter a baffling aspect of the law. When a building is constructed, all of the lumber, nails, insulation, and other building materials that are used to make it are personal property. But once those materials are incorporated into a building, they are converted by operation of law into real property. The only exception to this rule is when the owner clearly makes known his intention that the building when constructed or trees when planted are to remain personal property. Therefore, whether a tree or building is part of the real estate depends upon the intent of the owner. Although in the absence of proper notice of the owner's intent to the contrary, the law presumes that trees and buildings are part of the real estate. The matter is further complicated by the fact that even after a building or tree has become part of the real estate, it is possible for the owner to change its character back to personal property. All he has to do is remove it from the land to which it is attached. So, is a house real property? Normally, yes. But if you choose to move your house off of the land on which it was built, or if you sell it to someone with the intent of moving it off of your land, you have made it personal property. So to review, real property or real estate includes land and anything of a relatively permanent nature that is attached to that land. This is what we deal with in the land title business. Since the earliest days of our civilization, real estate has stood apart from other forms of property. Early lawyers and judges were so intrigued with its peculiar characteristics that they formed a separate body of law applicable to it. The relatively permanent, immovable, and indestructible features of real estate, together with its adaptability to use, have resulted in it occupying a preeminent position in our civilized society. More money is invested in real estate than in any other form of property, and more mortgage loans are secured by real estate than by any other type of security. The characteristics of permanence and immovability make it possible and convenient for numerous people to hold different, simultaneous, and concurrent interests in the same piece of land. Its adaptability to use has resulted in the creation of innumerable rights, interests, and estates. As society and the economy have progressed, land has been utilized to serve more ends, and as the use of land has increased, the possible rights to that land has multiplied, and its title aspects have become more intricate and involved. So, now that we understand what real property or real estate is, let's move to the next fundamental term in our industry: title. What is a title? The truth is that there is no simple definition that encompasses all of what a title is or should be. We say should be because what a title is and what it is supposed to be are often two very different things. But to keep things simple, a title is what you get when you buy land. It is a bundle of rights and entitlements that you can now use because you own the land. If you think about it for a few minutes, you'll realize that what you actually get when you buy land is the title and not the land itself. No one can pick up a piece of land and hand it to you. You can't put it in your pocket or carry it away. All that you get is the title, and the title gives you the right to enter upon the land and to possess, occupy, use, control, enjoy, and dispose of the land at your discretion. In the title business, one must develop a vivid sense of imagination because many things in this industry exist which are real, but which you cannot see, touch, or feel. Such things exist because the law says that they exist, and it describes them, and their characteristics, and their effects. A title is a perfect example of this phenomenon. Courts and lawyers speak of good titles, bad titles, defective titles, perfect titles, even marketable titles, yet no one has ever seen a title. Of course, we've seen evidence of title, such as a deed, a will, or a court decree, which passes title from one person to another, but no one, except in his imagination, has ever seen a title. This is because a title is essentially nothing more than a combination of specific and defined rights. A right may be a term more familiar to you than the term title. As a citizen, you have many rights that you cannot see or touch, but that you recognize and exercise on a daily basis. Your rights as a citizen are protected by law, and in the same way, your title, the rights of ownership that you get when you buy a piece of land, are also protected by the law. The word entitled is derived from the word title. If you say that a person is entitled to something, it means that he has the right to own and possess it. If you say that a person holds title to a piece of real estate, you are effectively saying the same thing. The person who holds title to a piece of land has the right to exercise ownership of the land. They have the right to possess, occupy, use, control, enjoy, and dispose of that land. They can do what they want with it. Each of these individual ownership rights, however, can be separately conveyed to different third parties. This does not necessarily give them title to the property, but it does give them title to a specific right. The concept is easier to understand if you think of title as a box of crayons instead of a bundle of rights. When a person purchases a box of crayons, he has a full spectrum of colors. At any time during his period of ownership, he can sell or give individual crayons to different people. However, every time he does this, the number of crayons in his box is reduced, and the number of crayons he can convey within the box is reduced as well. Therefore, the next purchaser still has a box of crayons, but it is no longer complete because some of the crayons are now held by other people. The bundle of rights in a title follow the same rules. In some cases, the rights of ownership are almost absolute, which is to say that the crayon box is still full and nothing has been given away. In other cases, however, some rights in the property do not pass to the purchaser but remain outstanding or held by third parties. For instance, The right to occupy the property may have been given to a third party through a lease agreement. If the owner of the property were to try and sell it, the ownership rights held by the purchaser, or his title, would be limited or restricted. You could not buy this property and kick the tenant out. That right to occupy the land has already been given away, and it was not included in the bundle of rights that you purchased. We use the term almost absolute because there is no such thing as an absolute title to real estate held by an individual. If nothing more, there is always the right of the government to tax and to take the land for defaulted taxes, to regulate and restrict the use and occupancy of land, and to condemn and take land under the powers of eminent domain. Furthermore, we frequently find absolute ownership diminished by outstanding rights held by third parties, such as easements across the property for underground or overhead utilities. The farther one goes in explaining titles, the more technical and involved the subject becomes. While much more could be said regarding titles, you should now have a sufficient working knowledge of what a title is and what it is not. To summarize, a title is the bundle of rights of ownership of real estate that is recognized and protected by the law. These rights primarily include the right to possess, occupy, use, control, enjoy, and dispose of real estate.